You ready, Corey? Should we start recording?
I'm ready.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode
Hello
of...
and everyone.
Damn it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tapcaf Transmissions. My name is Justin, joined, as always, by my very special, very nice friend, Corey. Today, we will be discussing the first
I've been
volume
demoted
of
from co-host to friend, or promoted? I don't know.
I don't know. How do you see our friendship? Is that a demotion?
Well, on the podcast, I think it's a demotion. But
Okay.
in our
Yeah.
friendship, it's probably the same.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for derailing my intros, which I already struggle with.
Yeah,
Kinda
that's
rude.
why I did it twice.
honest,
because it's
yeah.
it's more fun this way.
Kind of rude. So we're talking about the 2003 Clone Wars series, the Tartakovsky, I think is how you say his name. I just call him the Tartar Sauce
Yeah.
version. The Samurai Jack Clone Wars. That I
Dexter's
think a lot
Lab.
of people... Yeah, Dexter's Lab.
Most important.
Much more similar to Dexter's Lab than Samurai Jack.
And the kid, get out of my laboratory.
And the difference is this one isn't the Clone Wars, it's just Clone Wars, which is like the Mark Zuckerberg titling, like not the Facebook, just Facebook.
But then it's the social network.
So today we'll be talking about Volume 1, which is sort of a compilation, I think, of the first two seasons.
Yeah.
And season 1 and 2 are kind of weird because each episode is like, I think the longest one is the very last one, or the second to last one, the one with Grievous. That's maybe like 5 minutes. But
Yeah.
all the other chapters in season 1 and 2 are literally just 2 or 3 minutes long.
Yeah, and I think Volume 3, or Volume 2, which is Season 3, which we'll be doing in 2 weeks after we do Ice Star's Revenge on the next episode, is going to be, I think it's like 10
Yeah,
to
it's
15
like
minutes
10
per
minute
episode,
episodes.
but there's only 5 episodes for the whole volume. So
Yeah.
a little bit more in-depth storytelling.
Yeah, so this one is very stylistic and very action-oriented. It's very, very watchable. Although it is kind of hard to find online, funny enough. Well, it's not hard to find online. It's hard to find officially online because it's not on Disney Plus, and I'm not sure if that's because there's some sort of copyright issue, or not copyright, rights holding issue. Maybe it's still under, maybe Cartoon Network owns it or something, or whether it's because it's not canon. Do you know anything about that?
I think it's probably because of the rights issues, but I'd hope that at some point it gets put on Disney Plus or something, because the version that I watched, and I assume you watched, actually has 2 of the chapters out of order as far as I know, and
Oh, really?
that's that really just throws off the whole story, because Kit Fisto is supposed to be punching or slicing up battle droids on Mon Calamari like 2 episodes later than he ends up doing it in the version we watched. But you can find this pretty easily on
Oh.
YouTube.
And pretty good quality and whatnot.
Yeah.
It says it's in 1080p, but I doubt this ever got a 1080p release.
It looked
but, okay.
fine.
It looked
when I was
good. Yeah, I
watching
thought it looked good. But yeah, just if you search on YouTube Clone Wars Volume 1, it comes up. Which is kind of weird because I've tried to use aspects of the Clone Wars in YouTube videos. Like, I'm talking about 10 seconds, and they immediately copyright flag anything. So, and not just, usually it's not showable as well, because some copyright flags, they'll just take the money. But for this one, it's like, yeah, you can't even use the footage at all. So, but
Yeah, I've
there's-
used the Grievous on Hypori fight from the last episode of this volume
Oh, really?
in my video about Grievous.
Mhm.
So I think I
Interesting.
used like 20 seconds of it, and it was okay, but I'd have to check again.
Yeah, because I got flagged for using 5 seconds of, you know how Fordo has that like stand in the next volume where like he kills like 10 battle droids and he like pulls out his pistol and shoots some. I used like 5 seconds of that and got the video taken down.
That's strange.
Yeah.
Because usually automatic detection only happens with 20 seconds, right? 21 to 23.
They can
You're usually
technically
safe with?
auto detect anything. It's just Star Wars generally will allow auto detection less, but like for other things, like I used a clip from Akira in one of my videos, and it was like 5 seconds of that, and I got flagged by like the Spanish rights holder for some reason. So yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah,
It could have been manual, I guess.
yeah. I think I've only used it the once, and I don't think I had a problem there. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'd have to check again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this came out in 2003, the volumes we're talking
Yeah.
about now, which means it came out, but this series was made to kind of help fill the gaps between episodes 2 and episode 3. So
Mm-hmm.
it introduced a lot of stuff that we would see in episode 3 before the movie came out. And
Less so this volume, but
yeah,
yeah.
well, Grievous shows up first.
Grievous, yeah.
So there's a bit of that because this series was fundamental, like a lot of Star Wars, was fundamentally made for the purpose of selling toys.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of action in it. They had relatively short episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you could even call it like really
It's
cool
like a bumper.
commercials, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it is. It's like a bumper, like because Cartoon Network. I never watched it on Cartoon Network, but they do have like these little 2 or 3 minute bumpers that they play between
Mhm.
shows. I don't know if that's where they originally aired. I think we got it in Canada on Teletoon, maybe. But yeah, you're right. It's literally like a commercial.
Yeah. Like it was
Um,
made because Hasbro wanted something to help advertise for toys.
mhm.
And that isn't really a shot at it. That's how like 90%
No,
of cartoons
no.
exist. That's 90% of Star Wars. Like George wanted to
Hmm.
make the money off of the merchandising. That's why
Hmm.
Ewoks are there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of the origin of it, and it was part of the Clone Wars multimedia project. It sort of launched
Hmm.
that off, where the initial books and books and comics and this show started to introduce a lot of the lore for the actual Clone Wars.
Hmm.
And we'll probably get into a bit more of that as we go here.
Yeah.
Uh,
I will say, as a general point, it is interesting to look at which ideas they had clearly established by this point. Because, like, we
mhm.
see V Wings, for example, which I thought was weird because V Wings don't appear in episode 2, or V19s, I mean. And there were a few other things like that, that I guess they just knew were going to eventually make it in. But it's early enough too, and of course it's long before the Clone Wars TV show came out, that a lot of what kind of makes the Clone Wars wasn't established yet. So it is a little bit weird to see that the CIS is using the Geonosian fighters everywhere.
Yeah, Muunilinst was
Um,
mainly defended by Geonosian fighters. This is actually one of the issues I have with this show, which is pretty obviously for like budgetary and time constraints.
mhm.
But the war is mostly fought by the same three ships,
Yeah,
and the later Clone Wars show has a lot of this problem as well. It's a bit more
yeah.
varied, but usually for this, it's copy pasted the same
Mhm.
fighters and ships just
Mhm.
everywhere. It's always Munificence Venators, Acclimators,
Mhm.
and if you see a fleet, it's usually a homogenous fleet.
Yes. One thing I will say I did like though is that in this volume, most of the major planets they fight on have at least some sort of like super weapon. Like they've got the Muunilinst has those giant turbo laser or like
Mhm.
artillery towers, which I thought were really really cool. On Mon Cala, there's like that
The
kind of
crawling
under
artillery under, yeah,
yeah, which is totally wild and kind of silly, but I loved it.
yeah.
Um, and then I'm trying to think if there's of course the giant smasher on Dantooine.
Yeah, the seismic tank, I think it's called.
Yeah. So there's lots of like, you're right, like the actual battles themselves, they're great for scale. And like I noticed this especially on the land battles because like even in the Clone Wars, it was very very infrequently that we got the like the large scale just like lines of clones firing down on lines of battle droids like you get on Geonosis or something.
Hmm.
And I would imagine that's mostly a budgetary thing. But in this show, just because of the way the animation is and how short the seasons were, I guess, they could afford to do these huge battles. Like the one on Muunilinst is gigantic. Like there are you would imagine hundreds of thousands of clones advancing on this city, which they're just recklessly destroying. And
Yeah.
you don't really get anything like that in the Clone Wars. The only thing that I can think of, like the biggest battle in the Clone Wars, is when they drop that ion bomb and they wake the Zillo Beast up. I think that's
Hmm.
on Trandosha, maybe. Um, but yeah, I appreciate that, and it's very the whole show is very over the top. Like
Yeah.
it's like a less over the top version of Samurai Jack, but
So
which is
yeah,
another great show.
That's actually something that comes up a lot with this show when people try to compare this show to like episode 3 even, or the later Clone Wars. Like,
Hmm.
oh, well, look how badass everyone is in this and what they're able to do versus what they do in other stuff. But I think that's something I've never really agreed with, because this show is meant to be very over the top. Like, it's
Hmm.
not really supposed to be the canon thing that
Right.
that a Jedi can just punch the shit out of a million super battle droids at once. Like, it's very stylistic, it's very over the top action. So I've never personally factored it into anything when talking about like, oh, this is
Hmm.
actually this powerful. Or was it
Totally.
Plo Koon in Volume 3 that leads the thing where they just jump out of the Venator onto the
Yeah, the Battle of
Providence?
Coruscant, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've never really put too much weight on
Hmm.
Stuff's performance in this versus other media, and we'll
Hmm.
probably get into that when talking about Grievous in particular,
Yeah.
because he's usually one of the focal points for that complaint about other media. But I
Hmm.
think if you're comparing like what Grievous is doing in this to what another
Hmm.
character does in another thing, it's
Hmm.
really apples to oranges.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't even when I watch the show, I don't even think about it really as part of like overall Star Wars canon,
Hmm.
especially this volume because of how short the episodes are and stuff. I kind of just imagine it as like this is a cool situation that
Yeah.
could have happened. There are some exceptions to that. Like I really like the battle on Yavin. I think that's cool.
The
Um,
duel with Anakin and Ventress.
yeah, kind of reminded me when I was watching that. It kind of reminded me of the Shadao Shy duel on. I guess it's
Yeah,
from that art where that's on
Ithor.
Ithoria, but I guess they're fighting on like they ended on
Hmm.
kind of a similar location. But I guess we'll get to that when we get to that. Should we just kind of go through the different chapters in order as much as we can? Because sometimes the
Uh,
chapters overlap a bit.
Yeah, sure. But do you want to do that first, or do you want to sort of talk about just the general idea of how it fits into the canon first? Because you kind of brought that up there,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
think
that's a good
it's
point.
might be something worth discussing a bit. Because
Hmm.
this is another thing that people have kind of uh, brought up about, like the difference between this and the Clone Wars later on, is that stuff that gets established in this show
Hmm.
is like this and the multimedia project are kind of held up as like, oh, that's when Clone War or that's when Star Wars made sense. But you
Hmm.
do, in my opinion, there's a lot narratively that doesn't really work even with the other books and stuff, where a lot of the events in Volume 1 and 2 take place technically over a long period of time. But if
Yeah,
you look at what the characters are actually doing, it feels like it could take place over the course of 5 minutes.
yeah.
And the stuff with Anakin and Asajj Ventress, especially, where she's introduced, she flies to Muunilinst, they fly to Yavin,
Hmm.
and that could be the course of a day. And it's almost presented within the show that it is the course of a day.
Right.
But when you flesh out the timeline more, there has to be more time between that.
Hmm.
So it like this show to me has always been a bunch of cool kind of vignette situations that stand
Yeah,
on their own
vignette's a
as
great
really
word.
fun battles to watch. And my memory of it before this rewatch, I hadn't rewatched it in a long time other than like individual episodes,
Hmm.
which is kind of how I watched it initially and how it's kind of intended to be watched.
Hmm.
Uh, for some reason, I remembered it as just being different situations from throughout the war rather than being the one concise, basically Battle of Moonlinst and
Yeah,
then
it's
Battle
like
of
kind of what
Yavin.
everyone's doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, think vignettes is like a really great word to use for it because it is just kind of like this is like there's not really a greater narrative at least at this point. Like you are just kind of seeing, except with the Anakin and the Ventress stuff, I guess, and the dark side stuff there.
Hmm.
But really, it is just showing like what the war was like, and it does feel like the whole series feels like it could just be like the first month of the war, and this volume feels like it could just be the first month of the war. But I don't really try to force it into greater continuity. I really don't worry about it. Like
Hmm.
I'm kind of the opinion, and this has come up a bit. I've noticed with Star Wars Squadrons as well. People trying to figure out like how like one of the big things I talked about or I saw talked about online was, oh, the Empire is customizing their TIE fighters, and that's like explicitly not allowed. But like sometimes you just gotta make stuff that's cool and that's fun.
Hmm.
And I think that this like strict adherence to canon is a detriment. And I don't think, for example, we'd ever see a show like this come out now, which is disappointing, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because it is too hard to make it fit in. If you want a strict canon approach, it is too hard to make it fit in with everything else.
Yeah, and like we kind of talked about this on one of the previous episodes. I think it might even have been when we talked about the final season of the New Clone Wars,
Hmm.
where I think both of us kind of said that the purpose of the canon should be to serve the individual stories rather than
Hmm.
forcing it the other way around. And like, I think for
Exactly.
both of us, it is really like one of the things we like about Star Wars is trying to figure out what the overall canon is, but trying to say like, oh no, this is exactly how, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. You're probably not going to get something that's super solid, even if
Hmm.
that were the ultimate goal of the people making the stories. And it's almost impossible, especially when you're talking about events that never really happened, to make something. Sorry if that kind of blew anyone's mind there. Star Wars is fake. Uh, Trying to make it always fit together. Like there should be some story that they're just kind of existing because they are cool. They take
Hmm.
place within the broader universe. But if
Hmm.
there's stuff that's kind of weird, don't worry about that too much. And then whenever you're doing something different, if you want to bring in parts of those, you can try to figure out what the
Yeah.
core story you were telling was. But it it's cool
Yeah.
lightsaber battles, and Grievous or Durge is a worm beast. Like it's fun.
Yeah, we've got jousting droids.
Yeah.
I think you're totally right. And the example that I kind of use is Star Wars Rogue Squadron for the N64,
Hmm.
because that was made. It's just really a bunch of missions that they go on, and there are some screw ups. Like I think Crix Madine's being rescued, kind of counters. I think he gets rescued as well in Dark Forces, maybe,
Hmm.
because he defected and then he apparently got caught and then defected again. But really, the point is they're telling interesting, fun stories, and
Yeah.
then um, Rogue Squadron actually does something interesting and has that sort of Dark Empire tie-in after the main story is over. And I think that's a more interesting way to do it rather than kind of, as you said, trying to force individual stories into the greater canon,
Hmm.
because that really limits how exciting and how kind of wild you can make your stuff,
Yeah.
and just generally how creative. Because say what you will about this series, it is very very creative.
Yeah. Like another example that I like to use is Corrin and his dad, where
Hmm.
if you read the X-wing books, the kind of timeline of events and their family history that they proposed makes no sense if you try to put it into the
Hmm.
context of the broader canon. But when I'm reading X-wing, that doesn't ruin X-wing for me. And then when I'm reading or when I'm watching the prequels, the fact is like, well, is Corrin 10 or is his dad 30 right now?
Yeah.
That doesn't uh, that doesn't ruin the prequels for me either. Like it's fun to talk about because I am interested in that aspect of the universe and like, okay, is there a way you can make this make sense? So what's the best kind of retcon you can do? But it
Hmm.
doesn't ruin the stories for me when there is that kind of thing where maybe it doesn't fit in perfectly.
Yeah, and there are some things that like someone mentioned in the comments too that the story ties in fairly well with some of the Dark Horse Clone Wars comics that came out at the time. I think a good example of that would be the ARC Troopers, um, because like we've got Fordo and the other ARC Troopers. He's not explicitly mentioned as being an ARC Trooper or anything, but I think he wears very similar armor, well, distinguished armor anyway. And the whole idea of ARC Troopers was introduced in the Dark Horse comic series, um, and it is just kind of a weird point. It's the same issue that the Legends had, like the or Legends books had before the Clone Wars. Really, technically, this is after Attack of the Clones, which came out in 2002. This was 2003 with season one, but it's still before Revenge of the Sith
Mhm.
and the Clone Wars TV show. So we're learning a lot about, or we're having to guess a lot about what's going on. Um, and yeah, there's just not a lot that's established yet, and that will change a bit with chapter three, or sorry, season three. But yeah, it's interesting to see kind of just a different approach, especially because this is the first real Star Wars TV show that had been out for a very long time.
Mhm.
Um,
And before
Certainly in
that's
my
like
life.
droids and
Yeah,
Ewoks.
yeah, exactly. So an interesting choice to say the least, but very fun as well and very very watchable.
Yeah.
Um, Anything else you want to mention before we go into each chapter breakdown, I guess?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, so let me just pull up my list here.
Our list sponsored by product. If you like product and want to get your own product, then make your own product.
And please stop emailing us with your... Didn't we get another one?
We had 3 or 4 emails that were just asking to advertise weird things. There was one that was saying they were Corey, and I'm like, wait, I'm Corey. So that kind of threw me off.
Hold on, my Chrome froze. I'm trying to... So the first chapter, I think, ends with... The first chapter is really just the prologue, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's... I was a bit unclear on how to delineate the first 3 chapters. I tried my best to do it because, like we said, we were watching a long compiled volume. But I think it is the... That's when they're doing the voiceover and Yoda's
very
writing
little actually happens.
The thing.
They basically just set up kind of... Very little... It doesn't really explain... Or very little happens, but it kind of sets up the rest of the story, because we know that... that Anakin is going to Muunilinst, and that Windu... I think we learned that Windu's on Dantooine, and we see a bit of kind of Palpatine's machinations there. And it kind of ties into to Revenge of the Sith, because it's like the whole Anakin's ego thing. Anakin thinks that... Well, Palpatine basically has Anakin lead the mission to Muunilinst when the other Jedi don't think he's ready. Of course, Anakin's a whiny baby, especially with his voice actor in this. So he takes it personally.
Yeah, I love Obi-Wan's voice actor, but the Anakin one, I got used to it, but it wasn't my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, most of the voice actors, or many of the voice actors anyways, are the same between the 2 Clone Wars shows, but Anakin's isn't. I can't remember the name of the guy who does it in this. Or maybe it is, because I see, isn't it Matt Luke? Oh no. Oh yeah, Matt Lucas does the voice in this, but it's Matt Lanter who does it in the Clone Wars. So
yeah, it's kind of a weird, of course, jarring voice for Anakin.
Yeah, it's not good.
But Palpatine is like appropriately creepy in that. So I really like the Palpatine stuff.
Yeah, I like the look of him too, not only the voice.
Well, he's also, like, this is the origin of the weird puffy shirt thing that then gets photoshopped onto real Palpatine, and that's got to be one of the best Star Wars memes, right?
There's a lot of good, like, screen caps in this. Like, there are a lot of characters who have, like, testicular heads or whatever, or, like, just have straight-up butts, like, as their face. Like, Mace Windu especially has a very funny look to him. But, yeah. So... Not a whole lot happens in the first. I do like the vibe of it, though, especially the end with the acclimators taking off from Coruscant. I will say, I'm not a huge acclimator guy, but they do look good in this show.
So, there is one thing that kind of stuck out to me in Chapter 1 that kind of stayed there throughout the rest of the volume, where the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan is, like, pure tension right from the start. Yeah. And I never really got the sense any point in this show that they in any way were friends or liked each other. Which, like, in episode 2, there's still, like, some sort of tension between them, but they are still friendly. Like, it's a much clearer, like, not father-son, but, like, older brother, younger brother kind of relationship almost, where in this it's just, like, Anakin's on a short leash and Obi-Wan's controlling, kind of a dick. And there's no connection there, and that was something that I didn't especially love. I would have liked to see a bit more camaraderie between them. There is, like, one moment on Muunilinst where they kind of exchange a glance and make a comment, and there was something there, but it just felt like it was lacking, and that was
totally agree,
something that I would have liked to see.
Yeah, I mean, they don't spend a whole lot of time together, but you're right. Like, right off the bat, it's not even like Obi-Wan being like, I get that you're annoyed, but, like, this is how it is. He's just kind of, he's a little too, like, preachy, I guess. And but yeah, that's a good point. We also get the blue, or the Azure Angel, I think, in Chapter 1, which is a interesting ship. Never made its way into the Clone Wars series. Some people have said that Plo Koon's ship looks similar. It does. I guess it's a blue Delta 7. But other than that, the Azure Angel's kind of like kitted out. Like it's got those two little extra, I guess like they're like air intakes on the bottom. It's got wings. I think it might have extra cannons on it as well. But yeah, I quite like that design. It looks cool in animation.
There's also the Azure Angel 2, and there are like 35 other fighters that Anakin gets throughout the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I was wondering, why isn't R2 in this? Yeah, but then R4 explodes later. Oh, that's why.
Yeah. I was wondering that exact same thing. I thought it was really weird. That Anakin
why is
didn't
R2
have
watching him take off?
I do like too how in episode 1, and there's 2 episodes where C-3PO gets a coat. Basically, he gets fucked up by a coat. In one occasion, he gets Anakin's thing on, like thrown on him. Then in another, Padme uses it to get him almost killed.
Yeah,
it's fun.
3PO, go check out those bombs over there.
Yeah, everyone was just like just unapologetically mean to 3PO,
Yeah.
like, even more so than usual. But moving on, we get to chapter 2, and that's the kind of Muunilinst thing. And there's a few chapters that cover this, so let's just kind of talk about generally the Battle of Muunilinst, what we liked, what we didn't like. I think someone you said commented that it's easier to invade than an Empire at War.
Yeah, that was one of the emails we got this week from Callum. Had a lot of points about it, his pros and cons, but that is something I cannot stand that map in Empire at War.
Yeah.
It is huge and windy, and it's awful. So
yeah,
much better here.
Agreed. What do you think? It's again very like Samurai Jack-esque. Like instead of it being giant, kind of weird, like Greco like buildings, it would be like towers or something, or like trees. But yeah, that plan especially has very serious Samurai Jack vibes. It's cool though. I mean, they're a banking race, and this looks like they're bank towers. It kind of matches the description even from Plagueis. So
yeah, like that's actually something that I really like in this show. That I think even the Clone War, like the later Clone War show, does pretty well too. Is making all the planets feel very different. And like it is a bit simpler of an aesthetic because they're kind of just copy pasting assets, but the style is very very good for Mon Cal, for Muunilinst, for Yavin. Yavin obviously had a more established style already, but they still executed it really well within the art style here.
What do you think generally of the art style? Because I remember when I was a kid, like watching the show, I really didn't like it. Like it really took away from it. I thought it was, I think because as a kid you got a little simpler taste, and I said I would see 2D, and I would think just generally that meant that it was less like advanced or less good than 3D. But now I'm really appreciating like the 2D art style, especially comparing how it holds up like with season 1 of the Clone Wars. I really loved it actually.
Yeah, like I liked it when I was younger, so I didn't really have much of a shift on it, but I'm kind of appreciating it the same way now that I did then, which probably speaks well to it and kind of goes with what you're saying there. It's kind of like when there's the early 2000s shift or late 90s, early 2000s shift from everyone using film to everyone using the worst iterations of digital cameras.
Yeah. And
like everyone has all their blurry photos from the early 2000s, and there's just parts of family photo albums that are just unusable from that point. And that's kind of Clone Wars season 1 compared to this show, and then Clone Wars season 7. But yeah, I think some of the characters I don't love, but
yeah, the ships especially I think look good, and the clones look really good. Just like all the war stuff, some of the characters are maybe a bit too stylized, like for my taste. But like I'm looking at a picture of the clone troopers from the next chapter 3, I guess, which we're also discussing now, and yeah, they just look great, and they do very clearly look like ARC troopers as well. So
everything in armor. Sorry.
No, I just said big fan of that. Is what I'm saying.
Like everything in armor, I thought looked great, and then like the human characters, other than a few, they tended to be weirder. So like Yoda, I really don't like in this. His design is kind of gross.
He's not great.
Yeah, Like Anakin's good, Obi-Wan I don't love, Padme I thought was good, but it's kind of hit and miss with the human characters.
What do you think of those giant weapons platforms they have over Muunilinst?
I like that they gave them kind of unique defense platforms that we want to use in Fall of the Republic, but they are just kind of space dildos. So,
I mean, that's a lot of Star Wars, though.
Yeah.
Space dildos and space pizzas fought the Galactic Civil War. But I mean, if you think about it, there's not really a whole lot else they had like for options. They could have used Luke or Hulks, but the CIS like really didn't have very much in the way of an established navy. Neither did the Republic. That's why in these first 2 chapters, all you see is acclimators. I was mentioning earlier too that I never used to be a huge fan of the acclimator, but in this show especially, I think they look great.
See, I'm kind of the opposite, where I normally like them, but in this show, I think they look really weird. There was one shot in this volume that I thought they looked cool on, where I think it was one where you could sort of see the bottom half, but anything that was kind of top down or side on, I thought they looked really, really wonky.
There was a nice shot at the end of chapter 1 where they're taking off from Coruscant. Maybe that's the one you're thinking of. But yeah, there's really not like that does limit it a bit. One thing I noticed too, this is kind of a different topic, is there are a lot of reused sounds even for a Star Wars property.
Yeah.
Like every time I forget which weapon it was, but it was just like, oh, that's the reload sound from Shadows of the Empire. There's like a lot of Shadows of the Empire sounds, which I'm sure didn't originate in Shadows of the Empire, but I'm just remembering, I guess.
Yeah, and we got to and they also launched the Nantexes from those platforms. That was cool. But
that was cool. And Anakin has that cool scenery flying through them.
With the missiles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
that was
like
really
destroys
nice.
one up. Kind of like he's turning back the clock, I guess. Just like when he was a kid. Both of us noticed too that the CIS have that sniper rifle that appeared in the Battlefront games later on, and I think that appeared in Battlefront Canon as well as the 2 Battlefront Legends games.
That just fires at 800 rounds per second.
Yeah. We were talking before the stream, and we said you were like there's one thing in this show, and that's every gun fires automatic, and that is true. The other truth that I noticed is that every single person, if they're wearing boots, has high heels. Anakin has high heels.
Yeah.
Every single one of the droids have high heels. It's like,
well,
not a comfortable
helps
way to fight a war.
Since everything's on auto, you kind of got to jam that into the ground a bit. That's what they're there for, and then it gets a little bit less kickback.
I can only fight on loose soil. Oh Jesus!
But I told you before the stream as well that I watched this more or less regular speed the first time, and then I did a rewatch this afternoon on 2 times speed, and it was just it was
that's like lasers. A fever dream. That's madness. You can't be doing that.
It made me kind of think of like watching this in like individual chunks versus watching it as the whole thing, where there's not too much story actually that goes on in this. No, there's very little dialogue, so it's mostly just like cool action shots, which is really nice for like watching it in 4-minute bursts. But if you're watching the whole thing at once, then it can be kind of like taking a shot of tequila versus just downing tequila all night.
Is that what we're doing tonight, by the way?
Yeah, we're gonna play some Halo, and we're just gonna have tequila shots every time we die, which will be frequent based on last time.
Not to say goodbye to Gus.
Murphy, take care of the family, bud.
It's his birthday today.
Happy birthday, Murphy.
He's turning 3. I got him I went to McDonald's and I got him a hamburger, and nice. I opened my hand and I put it in front of him. He just ate that fucker up. Didn't think twice about it. I was like, that's my boy.
How old is Remy?
Remy had half a cheeseburger as well, actually, but like she's kind of fat, so we only gave her half. Remy I think she's 5. Murphy turned 3 today.
All right, so Remy would actually be the one looking out for the family. For some reason, I thought Murphy was older.
Ray's kind of a bitch. So,
Okay, well that's it's not
like,
good.
literally, she's a female dog, but like, she'll be sitting on the like, we've got like a hutch next to the window. She'll be sitting on it, and Gus will come over and just give her a hug. He'll go Remy and give her a hug, and she just start growling.
Nice.
Even though she would never bite him, but she's yeah.
So do you and Kelsey like divide the two? Do you think of one of them as your dog and one of them as
Oh
her
God,
dog?
no. Like as you know, and as a lot of people know, like I'm out here streaming all night and working. The second Kelsey goes to bed, both the dogs go with her.
Nice.
Yeah.
So do you at least have Wilbur, or is it just the giant rat that's your pet?
No, Wilbur sleeps outside, and he spends his nights ratting, killing rats and animals and stuff.
So the rats are yours. Everything else is Kelsey's and Gus's.
No, the rats belong to Wilbur.
You don't even want one.
No, dude, rats are gross.
But
We
it
had a
was
really
just
big
so big.
spider. We had like a. Is you ever see like a wharf spider before? Where they're like, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 inches long, like
Did you say
really,
wharf,
really
like WARF, or dwarf?
WHARF, or like a dock spider,
Okay.
or like a fisher spider.
So,
They're just
yeah.
really massive. We found one in the basement the other day, and until I killed it, that
Gross.
was mine because no one else wanted that.
We found when I was in like high school or something, my dad and I found this giant yellow orb weaver thing. And it was like the size of
yeah.
my palm.
Yeah.
So I put it in my little insect container and then released it into the forest. But that was the only one I ever saw that big, and it scared the shit out of me. Didn't like it.
So before I crushed my toe, I was moving those. I was moving big patio stones, and under each one was a bunch of salamanders, and I thought that was pretty cool.
You should have mailed me one. That
They're
was
pretty
really
epic.
I've been
showed it to
watching-
Gus.
I've been watching a lot of like aquascape videos and like terrariums and stuff.
I like that.
And I kind of want to just make one when I move. Just have one in my office with like AT-AT and ATST miniatures in it, so I can claim it's a business expense. It's backgrounds for streams, guys. It's legit.
Yeah, exactly. You know what's cool? Like tidal pools. You ever watch any of those tidal pool videos?
Yeah. Any kind of like diorama style video, big or small. That's just the best content on YouTube. Everyone should just
Agreed.
turn off this podcast. Let's all just go and co-stream someone else doing it.
I'm like a 20-minute drive away from the ocean. Like I can go start a live stream down there.
I guess I could go to the Ottawa River, but
Yeah.
it's all right. You can see Quebec, so that's fun.
Is that fun?
It is fun. It's where all the cheapest houses in the Ottawa-Gatineau region are. The NCR.
Okay. Anyway, one thing I want to talk about too, and want to get your impression on this, is the handling
cab?
of droids. Because the droids are still pretty serious in this one, which is weird. Because in Attack of the Clones, that's probably like the silliest they get.
Yeah. So you're right. Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace are both pretty much the.
Well, they're not that bad in
silly
Phantom
droids.
Menace.
But
The Phantom Menace, they still have their old voice. But yeah,
they are a bit when they're not on the main Naboo battlefield, because like the Gungans are the comic relief there.
Yes.
Like earlier on and in other points in the movie, they're relatively silly. But to me, in this, other than like the IG Lancers, like the super battle droids and the regular battle droids were just there to explode. And
oh, totally.
so they couldn't make them too funny because they were too busy blowing up and getting punched. Imagine like if those super battle droids were what Delta Squad was fighting in Republic Commando. That game would be so much
instead of
faster.
being 6 hours long, it'd be 3 hours long.
It'd maybe be 15 minutes.
But yeah, I don't know. They're fine. They don't have the over the top personality. Same with the clones. The clones at this point are still just clones.
Yeah.
And really, even in episode 3, the clones are still just clones. It wasn't until, I guess, Commander Cody gets a bit of. Even Commander Cody, like the
He
clones
just
all look
nods
the same.
He
What's
just
that?
nods in episode 3. He doesn't really.
Yeah.
He has a
Yeah.
name that kind of makes him unique, but
Yeah. And like, Palpatine calls him directly, which I think is pretty cool.
Well, they have a poker game every weekend, right? So
Commander Cody, I know when you're bluffing. Funny. Okay. Should we move on? So I think we've covered most of Muunilinst. I did say I like the big gun, and I do like that it's kind of like it's very Geonosian like, because there's the Geonosis like. There's even the scene of the Munes looking at that map where it's like it's kind of similar to when the all the CIS folk are at Geonosis inside the caves looking at like the
Yeah.
advancing Republic forces. Same thing. We get to see those big the big artillery pieces again, and they're firing different kind of munitions this time. It's like, instead of being a solid Mantillions, yeah, instead of being a solid laser, it's like they like shell it basically, which I thought was cool.
Mm-hmm. Like were those the SVHATs? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
And then they just explode by getting hit by a lance once.
Yeah.
Somehow. So should we talk about just Durge in that section now? I mean, and that'll probably
I think that makes sense. I don't think we need to go back and forth between the different, because for those who haven't watched it, that's kind of how it works. Like the first episode we already talked, but then I think there's two. There might even be 3 or 4 of them episodes of the same battle in a row, but then it kind of switches up quite a bit. We had Durge, who is like one of the most overpowered characters in Star Wars, because he's pretty much unkillable. And I kind of like how this is something Legends did. It gives like the CIS lots of like interesting personalities, whether they're like dark Jedi or like bounty hunters like Durge. Didn't you do a video on that, on the dark Jedi that worked for the various dark Jedi who worked for the CIS?
Yeah, I think I did. I forget if it was specifically on Sora Bulk or if it was on something else.
Because didn't Dooku have like 12 in total?
Yeah, he had a bunch of the Dark Acolytes, and then Sora Bulk kind of led them.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Ventress did later too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sometimes it almost just seemed like there were as many of them as there were the actual Jedi. But
yeah, and that's something that Canon hasn't really done. At least not nearly as much. I don't know. I like that about this. Like there being the kind of kooky CIS characters, and Durge is definitely one of them. So Durge is basically, at this point, does it? I guess it doesn't explicitly say, but he is a bounty hunter just working for the CIS, right?
Yeah,
like he's not.
He's working for them because he specifically hates the Jedi.
Right.
I think because did they exterminate the Jedi?
I think so.
And I was trying to figure out if Jedi was named after Jendi, which I assume it
probably. Yeah, I imagine.
But yeah, he's just basically there to kill some Jedi, and I wanted to call them munitions, the Moons. Like, well, why are you here if you're not going to do anything? And then he gets on a speeder bike and uses a lance.
Does a lot of things.
Yeah, which, I mean, I wouldn't personally pick a lance as my weapon of choice for a space war. But hey, if that's what his deal is, perfect. And luckily for him, Obi-Wan decides that, you know what, we're jousting now.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's like a explosive tipped lance anyway. That's kind of nice, and it's like he's got like the cool IG droids with him.
Yeah, the IG Lancers.
Yeah, so that's cool. But I mean, he gets his ass kicked by Obi-Wan on like, I guess it's 2 different occasions in this. Yeah. Obi-Wan chops him up, and then later, he goes inside of him and like explodes inside of him. But he does enter him. It's no better. You try to explain how he kills him, or how he defeats him the second time.
I can't. There's no good way to say it.
No, there's not.
Obi-Wan is inside Durge and explodes. But yeah, like my notes for chapter 8 just say Durge is only good at not dying, which is pretty much what happens. Like he pulls out 18 different weapons. Obi-Wan ruins them all in one go, and then they end up running off later. But that is when we see Obi-Wan in the clone armor first, I think. So unless I just missed it on the earlier art, but that kind of sticks throughout later canon stuff, and then we see that in the Clone Wars as well. So that's
Mhm.
always something that I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I think his armor's a bit more clone trooper-y in this one, because doesn't he later on just have like a chest plate and then
The shoulder
because like
plate.
in this he's wearing full clone trooper armor except with a cape, isn't he? I think it's a little different, but
Yeah. He's wearing like random assorted bits and pieces in other media, but like he pretty standard is part of a chest plate and a shoulder plate, I think, one of the pauldrons. But
yeah, he's an OG. He's down there with his boys. You know, he's even dressing like them.
oh, I
Like
think
me
we
and my
got that.
boys.
Corey in chat is saying we got that backwards. It's the Mandalorians that Durge hates, and since the clones are clones of Boba Fett, that's why. That checks
Right,
out.
because the Jedi live for a really long time, I guess. But because they are. That's like you said. That's their main thing. They have extreme longevity, not just from like damage, but they just don't really die.
Yeah, they're basically hunters from Halo, where they seem really big and intimidating, but then the Halo 1 pistol... No, I don't think anyone ever tried to use a Halo 1 pistol on Durge, but they're made out of the same worms.
Guaranteed.
And that would have just ended Durge pretty quickly.
Yeah, get that little peach-colored blood coming out and just finish her off. But no big deal. No big deal. What do you want to talk about next? What battle do you want to talk about next?
Well, there was one other thing with the fight in the command center with Durge when he finally kills him, and Obi-Wan is like making weird comments the whole time, and he does this a bit earlier and later. It's like, I believe you will surrender it. Seems I've created quite the mess. And then he's just making those comments to the clones, and they're like, yes, sir. So it's kind of like
fuck up.
Varric
like I'm gonna
Chewie.
die. I'm gonna die probably before this war is over.
No one is having Obi-Wan shit right now.
It's like, okay, space Jesus, like you got the Force. Like I'm literally going to die from this unkillable monster. I don't
Read
find
the
it very funny.
Yeah. Like I don't know who he's doing that for the benefit of. Maybe he knows he's in a TV show and it's for us. But like the clones never
I know
enjoy
who it was
it. For Durge. Can we explode inside?
It was for you when you guys need quotes for Fall of the Republic.
That's
when
true.
you need audio to rip.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. Sign it, cut it,
Put it
slip it in.
Get her done.
Yeah, slip it in like you did with Durge, and let that explode all over the ears of our players. It's like, yeah, the clones don't like him. Anakin doesn't like him. No one likes Obi-Wan in this universe.
Besides Obi-Wan.
Yeah, Obi-Wan loves Obi-Wan. It's a lot more like Zap Brannigan and Kif. I don't know if you've ever watched Futurama.
Yeah, of course I have. But I don't think so. You're saying he's Zap?
He's Zap Brannigan. It's
Really
basically the
Kif.
No,
unless that's the clones.
That's the clones.
Okay.
What do I call this disease, clones? Sexlexia, sir. The sexiest disease.
I mean, yeah, that works.
I've exploded inside Durge.
That I can definitely see. Obi-Wan just needs short shorts. Maybe it'd be.
The idiot wants to see you now. Kif's
Should we talk about Mon Cala?
No, let's talk about Kif some more. Fine, we'll talk about shirtless Kit Fisto.
Doing literally the exact same arc from the Clone Wars, just way better, in my opinion.
Well, compressed into 3 minutes instead of having to develop into a whole arc.
Way better. Well, I think it's a lot more creative too than because it's the same general premise. There's the Mon Cala and the Quarren. They don't really like each other very much. That's pretty much it. And then there's droids as well.
Yeah. I think Yoda mentions the Quarren Isolation League by name too.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of
I just think like it's a lot more creative because the one thing I did like about the Legends one, or not the Legends, the Clone Wars one is where they bring the Gungans in and they drop them off on the or from the Venators and they're just like jumping in from the hangar. That was funny, but yeah, I like this one a lot more.
Yeah, it was fun. I liked the canon. The Mon Calamari jousters. Again, kind of weird that jousting is the the combat method of choice in Star Wars at this point.
We got jousting. Yeah, do they teach that on like in like grade 2 of Clone Wars of clone training? Like,
well, clone training, Mon Cal training, it's just like I
yeah.
understand using it in one place, but it
Mhm.
comes up a lot. So
I mean, there are also like a lot of creative weapons too. Like, it's better than just it being swimming droids, 'cause there's like different. I think like there's like a whole new droid class if I remember correctly, and there's like droid submarine.
yeah.
So, oh, there's the giant cannon which just gets yeeted the fuck like into some deep sea ecosystem that's probably very fragile.
Yeah, but we can't see it anymore, so it's fine.
They're like, okay, what should we do? Should we just pull this out of the water and dispose of it safely, or just yeet it into this sensitive ecosystem?
Well, that because like, isn't it
Like,
Mon
yeet it,
Calamari
yeet it.
live up on the cities, and then the Quarren live in the deeper in the ocean? So they probably just pushed that into a Quarren neighborhood.
Right, so it's like more Quarren racism, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was being
I will say,
quarantined.
if I were managing this battle, I don't think I'd be parking my Venators in the water. At least not right over the.
Well, no one parked
wouldn't
their
be-
Venators in the water because it was acclimators. God.
Right, acclimators. Sorry, but it's not a very epic plan because a bunch of them get shot. I do like how the subs are basically like the. I don't think they have anything like that in the Clone Wars, but they're kind of just like vulture droids. Just
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
there's, like, different sized
the
ones.
Trident droids kind of take that role in later.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think I actually kind of prefer the Tridents for that specific purpose.
The Tridents are really cool.
Like I like to
Especially,
use
like-
the submersibles in this as like an air unit or something, but
It does look like it'd be like a speeder almost.
yeah.
I mean the Trident is super cool, especially when like they go on land.
It's very Mars thingy.
Yeah.
Or the Worlds. That's the one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what happens on Mon Cal. Shirtless Kit
Mhm.
Fisto, a lot of shirtless Kit Fisto. Then we get a few more shots of shirtless Kit Fisto. I tried to
I mean,
make
he do be
swole
looking
thing.
good though.
Yeah, you can see why him and Ayla hook up later in weird ways.
I do like to. There's a shot where one of the acclimators gets blown up, and the other ones just like get put. There's like a big wave that just like knocks them across the sea. I thought that was
Like
pretty
toys
cool.
in a bathtub.
Yeah.
That's what
And
I do
the
with
main
my
acqui-
acclimator toys.
Just like a fleet of acclimators and one large rubber ducky.
The rubber ducky has a super laser.
Did you notice Kit's got he's got like a looks like an ocean lightsaber though? Kind of looks different than a lot of the other ones, and he does some like water bending as well. He's like throwing bubbles basically. That's how he
That's the
destroys
force
the leg
push.
on that thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's water bending or air bending.
I think he's airbending underwater.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to talk about that on our Avatar episode.
Which do you think is the worst of the bendings? Of the
See,
4. I don't know if there's more, so don't spoil if there's more. But of the 4, that
I think that Earth and
Earth is lame.
yeah, Earth is the one that I definitely wouldn't want. I could see myself wanting to be either fire, water, or airbender. Probably fire or airbender, especially. Like I'd definitely pick airbending, but I could see an argument for the other two. Earthbending is kind of just meh.
I'm not that far yet. I'm like halfway through season 2, I guess. But it seems like with firebending, you can do shit like use electricity and stuff. Because like Zuko's sister makes like lightning.
Yeah, like lightning bending is kind of a high level fire bending technique.
But then there's like the water benders. Like I thought it was pretty cool when they're like controlling the plants. You remember that?
Yeah.
There's like the episode where they
Yeah,
go
the swamp
see Yoda.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more stuff that's going to happen. Like, I really like how they develop the power usage in Avatar. But I don't
One
want to
thing
say
that-
too much because that will spoil you. And there's going to be people trying to spoil you in the chat. And I saw some people on Twitter being not very epic about that.
Oh yeah, I'm not
So-
reading the chat right now because I figured that might happen.
Yeah. So let poor Eck remain naive about whatever happens in Avatar so he can enjoy it properly.
I do like too. The last thing I'll say, because this isn't the Avatar episode yet. I like how
Yet.
each one has like sort of a unique like. It's almost like a martial like art to it. Like
Hmm.
the waterbending seems to be like Tai Chi or something. It's like very flowy and like. Then the ground one is like kind of bursts of power.
Hmm.
Yeah, oh, that was cool. Anyway, should we talk about because that kind of brings us nicely into the Ventress arc, I guess.
Yeah.
Because there's like the first episode, there's like I don't even know what it's just like. I don't know if they're testing droids at that place or if it's just like a battle arena or what.
It looks like they put out a call for like super duper hunters, and then Ventress comes in and murders everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So like war beasts and droids and bounty hunters, but then they all kind of suck, or they're all meant to be powerful, but then Ventress is just that much better than all of them.
I noticed there was one droid. I couldn't remember its name. The red one with like two gun arms that I recognized from somewhere. I think it got a high res picture in the one of the droid books. What's the droid book that has all those weirdly high res? Is that like the Essential Guide to Droids? It's like those really weirdly high res
Yeah, this
droid.
new Essential Guide to Droids is the one with like the Great Heap and Vuffy Raw and
Yeah.
stuff.
Anyways, I'm pretty sure one of the droids
Yeah.
there got a depiction in that. I can't remember what it was though. Let me see if I can find it. But yeah, I thought that was kind of cool to see all those different creatures and whatnot. Droids.
I'm trying to scrub to where she first shows up because I got it open on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And Palpatine talks to Ventress almost immediately in this too.
Yeah,
But
it's like 20 minutes in, by the way.
okay, yeah, here we go. But yeah, there's a weird wolfy hair dude.
Mm-hmm.
Shit, I was just at the red guy.
I'm looking at the one at 18 minutes, I think. 18 minutes, let me see. Is that the one?
Yeah, I just saw his head go rolling.
Yeah,
so.
that guy. I recognize him from somewhere. I can't remember from where. Yeah, the flame one there. Oh, I'm pretty sure that was the one that was meant to be a replacement for. I feel like I did a video on him. He was meant to be a replacement for other, um, like a replacement for the mainline battle droids. What's his name though? I can't remember, but I think he was maybe made by like Einar or something. But yeah, I recognize him from somewhere. But yeah, it's a cool scene because we see lots of like just
Weird aliens and droids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, then she tries to tell Dooku she's a Sith, and he's like, no.
Yeah, I do
And-
like that. She thinks she's hot shit and like, yeah, you're actually not.
Yeah, but then we do get Palpatine approving Dooku taking an apprentice, which
Mm-hmm.
they need to be a bit more plausible deniability there, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, I do like how also the droid is called the L8 L9. It was made by the Tag company, so Baron Orman Tag. I do like how he specifically calls her like an acolyte or something. I don't remember the exact wording he uses, but pretty clear. It's and that's how I like Darth Maul handled too. Like not an like they're not a Sith. They're just like a rabid dog basically, and like Palpatine's sending her to her death. At least he thinks.
Yeah. I think even Dooku generally thinks of Ventress as someone he's disposing of eventually. I don't think. I'm trying to remember. There was someone else that I think kind of got presented as who Dooku would have taken as a Sith apprentice and gotten rid of Ventress. It might have been Sora, but yeah, she kind of just gets sent off to deal with Skywalker because the Battle of Muunilinst is still ongoing this entire time. And Anakin probably smells horrible because he's been in his cockpit forever. But we kind of went over everything with the Muunilinst there. We may as well just go straight to the Yavin duel.
Yeah, Ventress is also another comic tie-in, I believe. I think she first appeared in the Jedi comics. Because this isn't where she was first introduced, I don't think. And I believe she was imagined for Attack of the Clones as well.
Wasn't she always meant as some kind of like general Jedi hunter, and that's why she has her lightsabers?
I think so.
And then kind of got split off into her and Aura Singh, kind of from the same character.
I didn't like Aura Singh's Legends, like her like uber skills that like Legends gave her, because like she's still alive by like Fate of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And I don't think she's a Jedi in canon, because isn't that like her backstory? She was like
failed Jedi apprentice or something.
Yeah.
She had a really weird story. I think it had a fair amount of inconsistency, so I was never sure which thing was being used. But yeah, she shows up with like the Mandalorians in Fate of the Jedi. Yeah, that was.
Or
someone
Legacy
hires
her. I think Leia or she's I don't remember exactly what, but she's either hunting or working for Leia and Han.
Yeah, I need to. When I finish,
but she's
NDO,
still
I'm
like the
just
top
gonna
of
read
her
through
game.
Fate of the Jedi.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's been killed now, because I think she's mentioned as killed in Solo. Yeah, she's killed by Beckett. Which is, I don't know. That's fine. She's not. She's literally in 2 seconds of the Phantom Menace. Like I don't really have any big love for her.
But yeah, so Anakin is like
Yavin.
walking through Yavin, and there's clones flying around getting murdered, and Anakin can probably sense this and sees some of it. He's like, something's not right. I can feel it. It's like, no shit.
Yeah.
Like, you followed Ventress here. The clones are getting murdered. Obviously something's wrong. Like, no wonder Obi-Wan hates you.
Yeah.
But this is where he gets a scar, so that's cool.
Yeah, I will say I really, really like this duel as well. I think I would actually say this duel is better than almost any in, perhaps better than any in the Clone Wars.
I would agree up until season 7. Because I think the Ahsoka and Maul duel is really good in that.
This duel does one thing that I think is really necessary for almost any Star Wars duel to be next level.
Have Anakin scream at the end?
Yes. No. But that is there for most of them. But for real, I think it's like a smart use of the environment.
Yeah.
Because this duel reminds me a lot of the Episode 5 duel, and I think that's on purpose. There's some really clear, there's some clear references. I think there's one part where I almost said Ahsoka, where Ventress comes out behind Anakin with the lightsaber. It's like exactly like when Vader comes out behind Luke after that kind of like brief interlude there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the main thing is like they kind of move through the environment and gradually get to the apex of not only the duel itself, but this literal tower, which I think is really cool. And then there's just like different stages, like when the rain starts, like that's a distinct stage. They get to the end, like, you know, the way they fight changed. It's a lot more interesting than like, that's what was missing, I think, with the duel in Rise of Skywalker on the Death Star runes, which could have been a lot better because they are kind of limited to that one area. There's some cool stuff with like jumping, but another good example would be like the duel in the Phantom Menace, where they start off in kind of the hangar, then they move all the way through the generator room, and then eventually they're at that giant pit. Or in Return of the Jedi, even they move through Palpatine's like his office, I guess. I'm trying to think of some other ones, but and same with like, that's why I find the duel in Episode 2 to be kind of underwhelming, even though it's got Yoda in it or whatever else, just because it's not exciting. Like there's no movement or flow to it or story.
Yeah,
and that's what this one really has.
It's just sometimes they stop to throw stuff at each other from the walls. It's more like a turn-based game, like Yoda and Dooku are playing Final Fantasy and Yoda rolls high in his deflection, but
I suppose. Way too high. It's like he rolled a 30 somehow.
Then the party's down. They need a healer to deal with Anakin and Obi-Wan, but this metaphor fell apart somewhere. I'm not sure where, but
it's all right. The shot with the water, of course, is pretty cool too on the lightsabers.
The rain, really calming, except for the screaming. That was less calming.
Yeah, and so Anakin is able to defeat Ventress by somewhat tapping into the dark side at the end, and he kills her in a pretty badass way. She's like on this ledge, and he like just destroys the ledge.
Mhm.
She falls down, of course, not to die, but to disappear for later.
Yeah. All the best Star Wars characters fall down to disappear for later, and everyone thinks they're dead. That's that's the best way to kill someone off, because then you can just use them later.
Yeah,
Happens to
sure.
Palpatine 6 times. Happens to Maul. Happens
Boba
to
Fett, probably.
Boba Fett. He falls into a hole.
Uh-huh.
Thrawn and Ezra fall into a hole.
Space hole.
Just a lot of holes get fallen into. Abeloth is locked into a hole for a few more book series, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually so the battle is the last two, well, the 8th and 9th episode of the second season. Season 2 actually starts off with, I think it's like the Mace Windu stuff.
Yeah.
Not really much to say because like very little actually happens in that. It's the least dickish that I think Mace Windu has ever been, because he's kind of nice to that kid for 30 seconds, which I don't know, kind of impressive.
Yeah, he gets a drink from this kid who should be nowhere near a battlefield. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of the seismic tank? Because I've always thought it was kind of fucking weird.
It is super weird. I mean, one thing I like is that I can imagine it being some sort of mining vehicle that's been repurposed for like war, which I guess is what most of the stuff would have been at this point. So that's kind of cool. I mean, that itself too it's very Samurai Jack like, because it's like going in and taking apart this massive beast, just mechanical this time. And even Mace Windu kind of moves like Samurai Jack in this one. I mean, I love some of the things he does too, but like there's a part where he punches a few battle droids, and I'm like, damn, that must really hurt your hand.
Yeah, they're made out of tinfoil.
Yeah, I love that part though where he's using the scraps to destroy some of the other ones is really cool. I've been kind of waiting for that to happen more often.
Yeah, like it's really lucky for Mace and for everyone else that gets surrounded by super battle droids that they never bother to shoot
Yeah,
at anyone, because like
Yeah.
they would have been screwed. But luckily, he gets as much time as he needs to just get as many punches in as possible,
Mhm.
and then he just finds his lightsaber floating later, and that really helps him after the seismic explosion thing.
I will say those two chapters are probably the most memorable, maybe of the whole series. Like, because they're really the one thing that I remember watching as a kid.
I think that and the
because
Ventress duel is what everyone kind of goes back to. That, the Ventress
Yeah.
duel, and Muunilinst 10 get mentioned the most.
Yeah, I mean it's so over the top, but it's so cool as well. And then we get probably the most boring of the chapters, the Ilum ones.
Yeah, other like Yoda uses the mind trick to go
Mhm.
and rescue Luminara and Varys,
Mhm.
but they should have been able to handle themselves, to be honest.
Agreed.
And Padme kind of sees what Yoda's doing, but it just seemed like Yoda was using the mind trick for the sake of using the mind trick, which doesn't seem very
Like,
Yoda-y.
you're like specifically not supposed to do that.
Yeah, and sacrificing the mission they're supposed to be on to go and help his friends is like basically what he gets mad at Luke and Anakin for doing all the time. But
yeah.
So yeah, I really don't like Yoda in this series. He's not Yoda enough for me.
He's kind of gremlin thing.
Yeah.
And I will say though, an attack on Ilum is genius. Like the Confederacy should have used all like some of those. Let's take like 2% of that Muunilinst fleet and just have them bombard the shit out of Ilum.
Yeah.
Jedi aren't getting any more lightsabers. Jedi are going to be demoralized. You'll kill a couple of masters there. I don't know.
It
Makes sense to
definitely
me.
should have just made a stop there. It's on the way to Muunilinst from pretty much anywhere. So yeah. Just go for it. Or they could build Starkiller Base.
Yeah.
I did like Padme in this arc, but that was kind of the only thing I liked about this arc.
It's just boring. I just kind of I watched this probably 3 times and just had to struggle not to zone out. That's one thing I realized while watching this. Like my attention span when just trying to watch TV is so low at this point. Especially, you really notice it with like something like this, or like even when I'm watching Avatar, because it's like if you miss 2 minutes, like you might miss the entire point of like this fucking season. And just like it's like throw my phone across the room, I guess.
Well, with this, it's really easy to zone out because it's like it's all high-paced action. So when I was rewatching this afternoon, I ended up Like I was doing that while working on some other stuff, and there were entire sections where it's like, okay, I remember this now. I'm just gonna look away, and there was a lot of points where I just didn't feel the need to look back at the screen because it was just, okay, this is just the fighting. I kind of know what was going on with the fighting, but then I realized it was all fighting. So okay,
yeah. It's like if you miss fighting in a show, it's like whatever.
Yeah. But I guess that gets us to the final chapter. Chapter 20.
The one I've seen chat has been waiting for, because this of course features the most powerful Jedi in Star Wars Legends, according to supershadow.com.
Shaggy.
Yeah. I don't know if this would be like Shagai or Shaggy, or it's Space Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. And we also have Wolf Mon, so the naming, and we have Wolf Mon as well.
Yes.
On Muunilinst, leading the end of the Battle of Muunilinst. So
forgot about that, yeah.
But then we do get shifted over to Hypori, where Master Varric, I think his name was, dies to Grievous, while calling Obi-Wan. And so we get the dream team of Coyote Mundi, Kakruk, Shakti, Ayla Secura.
I don't think that is Kakruk, because that's what I thought, but I googled it. I think it's just
Isn't he even wearing his hat?
Oh, maybe I just read wrong, because that's the first thing. That's Kakruk. Okay. Yeah, I'm probably wrong about that.
I'm not like 100% positive, but I.
Oh no! Like... Yeah, you're wrong. I just googled it. Yeah, sorry.
I'm wrong.
No, sorry, you're right. I'm wrong.
Okay. It's like there's only so many whipped Jedi.
I like Kakruk. Doesn't he in Legends? Doesn't he live forever?
Yeah, he's on the council. With. It's him, Tree Lady, and other guy, like in Legacy. So
how does Luke, he live for so long? Do Whippets live forever?
Apparently, Kakruk does at least. It's the hat. Yeah. That's where he gets his power. But
I never really noticed the hat, to be honest.
The hat was a big deal for a long time. Kakruk's sweet hat.
I guess I never really noticed it.
Well, he's got his hood in this. I don't think he actually has the hat. I was just scrubbing through looking for it. But if you look at the Legacy stuff, because he was off.
I just found the. Oh yeah, that hat. Okay.
Yeah, because he was off training. He took a bunch of younger Jedi around and protected them after Order 66. And it's not explicit when he went and rejoined Luke's Jedi Order, but by Legacy. Everyone else that we know from NJO is dead, including Lobaka, who should have been alive for sure. And the Jedi Council members include one who I always forget, and then two who were from the old Jedi Order. There was the Tree, who was upset about Udbanar being dead and was like friends with Mace Windu.
Udbanar is cool, to be fair.
And there was Kakruk.
Yeah. How did he survive Order 66?
Kakruk?
Yeah.
Oh shit! I just did a video on this. He got not shot by clones, but then he was like hiding in random places.
There's all these like Star Wars YouTubers who will do videos on all these people who survived Order 66, but I'm pretty sure all they do is like go to like a Wikipedia list and then they miss like all of them.
Yeah.
Like Kakruk is one that like usually won't be on there because people forget about him.
See, he's always like the number one example to me of Jedi who survived Order 66. And because I think the video I did was specifically on characters who survived until after Endor.
Yeah, because that's a much smaller list.
Yeah, and who still did something useful afterwards, which is an even smaller list, which is basically Ebba Brand, Kakruk, and
what about what's her name?
Tree Lady?
No, why am I forgetting her name? The greasy girl, the greasy old woman.
Vima Deboda.
Yeah, Vima Deboda.
Yeah. Yeah, she's helpful too.
But I mean, it's much rarer that there's a character established, like in a Clone Wars era piece of media, who then makes it, because all of those ones like Vima Deboda, they're just established afterward. Like they were established before the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
But yeah, so Grievous is there. There's also the guy who's kind of like, he's human, but he's got like the head wrappings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's meant to be like a turban and it's just stylized, but
Mm.
so I don't want to call it a turban per se because it looks more like it's kind of wrapped around him as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's there too, and I think he dies the kind of off screen. But everyone in this
Yeah.
fight except for Shaggy and him, I think, survive. So
Shaggy has the worst death. He just gets crushed.
yeah, that kind of sucks to be him. But yeah, this is the first time we see Grievous kicking the ass of
Mm-hmm.
2 Jedi Council members
Mm-hmm.
and a couple other random Jedi, Naila Sakura, who is
So I think season 2 came out in 2004. So this is still a year out from the movie. So it's pretty
yeah.
cool that they got this. That they got him in here. I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff. Like the voice is the most obvious thing that's different. He only uses he doesn't use his second set of arms. I don't think. He might in the second season, but I don't think he does in
I
this
don't
battle
think he
'cause
does. I think they
he's got his
saved that for the
lightsaber
movie.
on his leg.
Yeah.
Or on his foot.
So I don't know if it was just an animation limitation, but I think they also wanted to save the 4 arms for a big reveal in episode 3.
Mm.
But we'll see in 2 weeks when we watch the next chapter.
Yeah, but he's badass. It's kind of the opposite because I think the Clone Wars goes too far the other way because Grievous does nothing, and I didn't really realize this until my recent rewatch, but he's always just retreating.
Yeah.
Like he talks so much shit and then just leaves.
Yeah, like he's still mentioned as having murdered a bunch of Jedi, but it mostly happens off screen. Even when they're in his kind of lair. Is that Kid Fisto that's there, or is that Coyote Money?
People are saying he uses the 4 arms at the end of Volume 2.
Does he? Okay. So do you think we should save our bigger Grievous discussion for Volume 2 because he shows up a lot more in that. There was an email we got about like this versus the Clone Wars, which we can talk about a bit, but there was also part of that question was comparing Grievous, and I think that's a better topic for next volume.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. So should we just talk about general impressions and emails then? Anything
Sure.
else you want to cover? I gotta say, I really enjoyed this personally.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
But yeah, I don't know that I can really say this versus the other Clone Wars. I think they both are good at different things. This is like a lot of fun, punchy action scenes. I don't think it does a great job as like a big narrative thing, but I don't think it's trying to do that, and I don't think it needs to do that. So I like this for just those kinds of fights. I like the other Clone Wars, mostly the later seasons for their character arcs and everything. Seasons 1 through 3 of the Clone Wars I don't enjoy a huge amount, but yeah.
I would say on average this is better than the Clone Wars, but the highs are nowhere near as high and the lows aren't as low. I don't know if it's actually on average, but just like it's really fun. I think it does what it's trying to do better than the Clone Wars.
Yeah,
so
it sold some toys, and that's all it needed.
Yeah. So subjectively, whether you like this or the Clone Wars better will be up to you, but it's very, very fun.
Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there.
So shall we read a couple of emails then and answer them?
Let's do that. That sounds like a good idea.
Okay. So we had one from Callum who says, "Oh, we already read that one. That was about Muunilinst being a lot less complicated to invade." Absolutely. Anthony says, "Was rewatching the sequel trilogy and gotta say, I feel like Armitage Hux was a character of a missed opportunity. The first movie portrays him as a rival of Kylo, and the second movie turns him into comedic relief, and the third movie is basically a cameo. Who are your missed opportunity characters?" That's an interesting question at the end. I mean, I agree with the Hux thing. He's definitely, I think, misused in episode 8, and then there's not really much they could do with him in episode 9, I guess. Can you think of a missed opportunity character? For me, it would be Darth Maul in the prequels.
No, I was always kind of satisfied with what happened with Maul. And then he came back and every missed opportunity was fulfilled. But I'm trying to think of if there's anyone that really sticks out as someone who should have been used more. And definitely Abeloth. I think she should be in more places. No, I don't know if that I really have one offhand here. That might be something that I have to think about and come back to.
I would like to see maybe like, I don't know. There's like, I always get disappointed whenever there's like a Rogue Squadron character that never appears in anything else, but
Yeah.
can't really think of any right now in particular that kind of like to have seen covered. I mean, I'm sure I'll try to think about this, but I'm sure there's some, but I can't think of any right now. Yeah, interesting question. And then we've got one final one. Actually, I just closed the thing. Do you want to read the last one? I just
Yeah,
closed
so
it.
our other email this week was from Joel Davis. Do you think it would be interesting if, in the new canon post Return of the Jedi era, Thrawn was essentially an overarching antagonist in the post Jedi pre sequel trilogy? If the sequel trilogy is going to be retconned in Dark Empire and Palpatine, then why not have the pre sequel trilogy post Jedi material essentially be Bantam era post Imperial factionalism, but with Thrawn as an overarching threat? So I don't. I want Thrawn to come back and do something, and I'd especially like some sort of live action Thrawn thing, whether it's a movie or something else. But I kind of would want to see that more with the Chiss Ascendancy or whatever's going on in the Unknown Regions at that point, rather than trying to reignite the whole warlordism or Empire versus New Republic thing. Because I understand why people don't like the Operation Cinder getting rid of all the warlord stuff, but I also feel like we got those stories already, so I can understand wanting to get rid of it, which is also why Palpatine coming back I thought was not great, because we did get that story and it wasn't that great the first time we got it. Yeah. So if I want to read about Thrawn being this warlord threat, then we kind of got that with the Thrawn trilogy. I don't really need that so much. If they wanted to do that as a movie thing, then maybe, because I think that would be a good way to kind of do the Thrawn trilogy as a movie, but without being able to change the kind of things that make the Thrawn trilogy not good for movies in the first place, which we've kind of talked about in our Last Command episode, I think. But I'd be happier with him being used in other places, or even after the sequel trilogy instead. But what do you think?
Yeah, that was my thought. I think because if they bring Thrawn back pre-sequel trilogy, he's very limited in what he can do. So,
and that was your problem with the pre-Endor Thrawn trilogy in the new canon, right?
Yeah, like he's got no room to operate. I know how it's going to end. So if they are going to bring Thrawn back, I'd prefer it be afterwards. But I think the most likely opportunity for him is in the Rebels sequel show that's been rumored. I imagine that would feature Thrawn and Ezra. One thing they could do is not find him and then find him after. But like maybe they don't age in hyperspace or something. I don't know, or like something strange happens to them. I don't know, or maybe just live a long time. But yeah, he needs to have an interesting, because they've done a good job setting him up, I think, but he hasn't done anything yet that like truly is deserving of like he's mostly just been a really good imperial. He hasn't really had his moment to shine yet.
But yeah, I think that's all I got.
Yep. Maybe we'll just save questions for next time. If you listen, guys, if you want to send us a question about this episode of Tapcaf or the next one, or anything about the Clone Wars, you can email us at tapcaftransmissions@gmail.com. Just a reminder that we won't be covering Clone Wars next week. We will be going back to the X-Wing series to look at Isard's Revenge, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, so that'll be Thursday, July 2nd. Where we'll be doing Isard's Revenge on my channel, then we'll be back on EckhartsLadder on Thursday the 9th to talk about Volume 2 of the Clone Wars. So you got a week to read Isard's Revenge, then you got a week to watch the Clone Wars Volume 2. If you want to send in questions, that's tapcaftransmissions@gmail.com. If you want to listen to the audio versions of these podcasts, well, out for a walk or on the toilet or something, then you can go to any of your favorite podcast supplying services and subscribe there, because the episodes go up consistently now on Saturday afternoon at 1:30 p.m.
Yep,
EST,
there's
I think.
also a link down in the description. I think it might just be Spotify and iTunes, but yeah, if you just search it, you can find it no problem.
Yeah, we're on. I think we're on other platforms too that Podbean automatically distributes to. But
Yes.
if there is somewhere that we are not that you would like to see us, you can send that in an email as well, and we'll see where we can spread our reach, because we are the only Star Wars podcast, so we can't deprive people
Yeah,
of
there are no other Star Wars podcasts, so we got a lot to do. So, yeah. And we will be streaming some Halo over on Corey's channel, his gaming channel, Corey's Datapad, or Corey Loses, sorry, and the channel we both kind of run X2 after this. So
that'll be
that's
about
pretty much
half an hour ish. Just
yeah,
under.
yeah. Let's say 9:30 my time. That's
All right, so 32 minutes, and we will be on time to that. I'm gonna have some cookies first. It's gonna be good.
sweet. All right, goodbye, everybody. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the podcast. Goodbye.
Live long and prosper.